Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in our lives when the noise of the world becomes deafening. Everyone has an opinion, a demand, a voice in our heads. And sometimes it feels like we're being pulled in every direction but the one that leads back to ourselves. In those moments, we must learn to embrace something many people fear: silence. Silence is often misunderstood. People think being quiet means you're weak or that you're running away. But silence, true silence, is not a sign of retreat. It's a declaration of power. It's in that silence where we discover our strength. Because when we step away from the voices around us, we finally get to hear the one that truly matters, our own. The one that speaks our truth, our purpose, our deepest desires. And to hear that voice, we sometimes have to cut all the noise. Yes, we have to cut some contacts. Now, I know that sounds harsh. The idea of cutting people off can feel cold or even cruel. But understand, this setting boundaries is not about building walls. It's about creating space. Space for you to breathe. Space for you to heal. Space for you to reclaim your peace. You have every right to distance yourself from people or situations that drain your energy or undermine your worth. It's not selfish, it's survival. And it's time to survive for you. Some relationships are meant to last a season, not a lifetime. And when those seasons end, we have to trust ourselves enough to let go. When you cut ties, you're not walking away from love or connection, you're walking toward a version of yourself that is stronger, clearer, and freer. It's an act of courage to say, I'm choosing me. You see, cutting contacts isn't about shutting others out, it's about choosing who you let in. It's about knowing that you can't pour from an empty cup. It's about giving yourself the grace to stand in the quiet and letting that quiet become your power. And trust me, in that space of solitude, there will be growth. There will be healing. There will be clarity. Because sometimes the greatest power we have is the power to walk away, to reclaim our time, our energy, and our hearts. And when we choose silence over chaos, when we choose distance over drama, we're making a statement that says, I will not let anyone steal my peace. So today I encourage you, if you find yourself surrounded by noise that no longer serves you, be silent. If you're tangled in relationships that drain you, cut the contact. Protect your peace. Guard your energy. And never, ever apologize for choosing you. Because in the end, silence isn't about absence, it's about presence. And the most important presence in your life should be your own. Silence is often underestimated in its power. In a world constantly demanding our attention, silence is seen as empty space, as if it's something to be filled. But what if we looked at silence as a source of strength? What if we embraced it as a vital part of who we are, a place where we find our true selves? When we choose silence, we are choosing to step back from the chaos and listen to our hearts, our minds, and our intuition. In those quiet moments, we are able to confront what's really going on inside of us. We are able to ask the tough questions that we may have been avoiding. What is it that we truly want? What do we need to let go of? And more importantly, who are we when we strip away the noise, the distractions, and the voices of everyone else? Silence is where healing begins. It's where we confront our deepest wounds, not with the expectation that they will be instantly healed, but with the understanding that acknowledgement is the first step toward transformation. In the stillness, we are forced to face ourselves, and that can be one of the hardest things to do. But it is also where we discover how resilient we are. In silence, there is no one to impress, no one to perform for. It's just you standing naked in your own truth and realizing that you have everything you need within you to rise. There's a quiet strength in being alone with your thoughts, in not rushing to fill the space with sound or other people's opinions. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness, that celebrates the loudest voices and the most visible accomplishments. But true power often comes from the moments when no one is watching, when no one is speaking, and when we are simply being with ourselves. In those moments, we grow. In those moments, we tap into a source of power that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Silence also gives us the ability to recharge. It's in the quiet that we can breathe deeply, reflect on what truly matters, and gather the strength to face the world again. It's in the silence that we learn to trust ourselves, to trust our instincts, and to trust our instincts, and to trust that we have the answers we seek. The world will always be loud, always pulling us in 100 different directions, but when we learn to embrace silence, we create a sanctuary within ourselves, a place we can return to again and again, no matter what storms are raging around us. This inner strength that comes from silence isn't just for moments of peace, it's a power we carry with us into every challenge, every decision, every relationship. When we've taken the time to be silent, to reflect, and to heal, we walk into the world with a quiet confidence. We don't need to shout to be heard. We don't need to prove ourselves to anyone. We know who we are, and that knowledge is unshakable. Embracing silence is not about withdrawing from life or avoiding people. It's about creating space for ourselves to be fully present, fully aware, and fully grounded in our own truth. It's about reclaiming our power, knowing that the most important conversations we will ever have are the ones we have with ourselves in the quiet of our minds. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed or lost in the noise, remember the strength that lies in silence. It's not an escape, it's a return to yourself. And in that return, you will find a well of strength that will carry you through anything life throws your way. Setting boundaries is one of the most powerful acts of self-care we can engage in, yet it's often accompanied by feelings of guilt. We worry about hurting others, about seeming selfish or cold, or about being judged for choosing ourselves. But setting boundaries is not about rejection or isolation, it's about protection. It's about protecting your energy, your peace, and your emotional well-being. And you should never feel guilty for taking care of yourself. Boundaries are essential for healthy relationships, both with others and with yourself. They are the invisible lines we draw to define where we end and where the needs, demands, and expectations of others begin. Without boundaries, we become overwhelmed, overextended, and eventually resentful. We may find ourselves saying yes when we mean no, feeling obligated to meet everyone's needs except our own, or carrying emotional burdens that were never ours to bear in the first place. Setting boundaries allows us to regain control over our lives and to make conscious decisions about where we invest our time and energy. It's important to understand that boundaries are not walls meant to shut others out. They are guidelines for how we want to be treated. They teach people what is acceptable and what is not in our interactions. By setting boundaries, we are not being selfish. We are being clear about our values and our limits. This clarity is not just a gift to ourselves, it's a gift to ourselves. It's a gift to others. When we communicate our boundaries honestly, we give others the opportunity to respect them, and in turn, to cultivate healthier, more respectful relationships. But why then do we often feel guilty for setting boundaries? Guilt often arises from the fear of being perceived as unkind or uncaring. We worry that by saying no, we are disappointing others, or we feel responsible for their reactions. But the truth is, your boundaries are not about anyone else, they are about you. You are not responsible for how others respond to your boundaries. You are responsible for your own well-being, and that includes prioritizing your peace, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Setting boundaries can also trigger guilt when we have been conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to how much we give to others. For many of us, especially those who are natural nurturers or caretakers, the idea of saying no feels foreign. We are used to putting everyone else's needs above our own, believing that to be worthy of love, we must sacrifice our own desires and comfort. But let me remind you, you are not here to be everything to everyone. You have the right to take up space, to say no without explanation, and to reserve your energy for the things and people that truly matter to you. Learning to set boundaries without guilt requires a shift in mindset. It means understanding that self-care is not selfish. In fact, it's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot give what you do not have. If you are constantly drained, emotionally exhausted, or stretched too thin, you will not be able to show up as your best self in any area of your life. By setting boundaries, you are ensuring that you have the emotional and mental resources to not only take care of yourself, but also to be present and fully engaged when it matters most. It's also essential to recognize that setting boundaries is an ongoing practice. It's not a one-time event, but a continuous process of checking in with yourself, understanding your needs, and communicating those needs to others. There will be times when people push back against your boundaries or try to test them. When that happens, it's crucial to stand firm and not allow guilt or fear to cause you to compromise your well-being. Remember, the people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries, even if it's uncomfortable for them at first. And when we talk about setting boundaries, we must also acknowledge the importance of setting them with ourselves. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to establish are the ones we need to create within. We may need to limit our own negative self-talk, challenge the belief that we have to do everything perfectly, or stop overcommitting ourselves out of a desire to please others. Setting boundaries with ourselves is about recognizing our limits and honoring them without judgment or guilt. So the next time you feel the weight of guilt creeping in as you set a boundary, remind yourself of this truth: you are worthy of protecting your peace. You are deserving of relationships that honor your limits. And you do not owe anyone an explanation for taking care of yourself. Boundaries are an act of self-love, and you should never feel guilty for choosing you. Self-reflection is one of the most transformative practices we can engage in, yet it often requires a level of vulnerability and honesty that can feel uncomfortable. However, when we trust the power of self-reflection, we open the door to personal growth, healing, and clarity in ways that few other practices allow. Self-reflection isn't about criticizing ourselves or fixating on our flaws. It's about holding a mirror up to our lives, acknowledging where we are, and understanding where we want to go. It's about looking inward with compassion and curiosity, not judgment. At its core, self-reflection is the practice of pausing and asking ourselves the important questions that life's busyness often distracts us from. In a world that constantly urges us to keep moving, to keep achieving, and to keep pushing forward, self-reflection requires us to do the opposite. It invites us to slow down, to be still, and to listen to the quiet voice within. This is where real insight and wisdom emerge, not from external validation or outside noise, but from deep within ourselves. When we trust in the process of self-reflection, we're giving ourselves permission to explore the full spectrum of our experiences. We reflect on our successes, our failures, our joys, and our pain. It's through this process that we begin to see patterns in our behavior, in our choices, and in our emotions. These patterns tell a story, and that story reveals the areas of our lives where we've grown, where we've struggled, and where we need to make changes. Self-reflection allows us to step back and examine the bigger picture, helping us connect the dots between our past and our present so we can make conscious choices about our future. One of the greatest gifts of self-reflection is the clarity it brings. So often, we move through life reacting to circumstances, making decisions without fully understanding why we're making them. We get caught up in routines and obligations and in the expectations of others, rarely taking the time to ask ourselves if we're living in alignment with our true values. Self-reflection gives us the space to ask the essential questions: am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Am I living the life I want to live? Or am I living someone else's version of it? These questions can be difficult to confront, especially when the answers reveal uncomfortable truths. But the power of self-reflection lies in its ability to bring these truths to light in a way that empowers us. Once we see clearly, we can make the necessary changes. We can start aligning our actions with our deepest desires, rather than staying stuck in patterns of behavior that no longer serve us. Self-reflection is not about beating ourselves up for past mistakes or missed opportunities. It's about learning from them and moving forward with intention and awareness. Another important aspect of self-reflection is its role in emotional healing. When we take the time to reflect on our emotions, we can begin to understand the root causes of our feelings. We often carry emotional wounds from the past that we haven't fully processed. These unhealed wounds can manifest in our present relationships, in our work, and in the way we treat ourselves. By reflecting on our emotions, we can trace them back to their origins, whether it's childhood experiences, past traumas, or unresolved conflicts. This awareness is the first step toward healing, as it allows us to confront the pain we've been carrying and start the process of letting it go. Self-reflection also builds self-awareness, which is essential for personal growth. When we understand ourselves better, our triggers, our strengths, our weaknesses, we can navigate life with greater ease and grace. We become more mindful of how we react to situations, more aware of how we communicate with others, and more conscious of the energy we bring into the world. This self-awareness helps us break free from autopilot mode, allowing us to respond to life's challenges in ways that are aligned with our true nature, rather than simply reacting out of habit or fear. trusting the power of self-reflection also means trusting ourselves. It means believing that we have the wisdom within us to guide our own journey. So often we look outside of ourselves for answers, hoping that someone else will tell us what to do or how to live. But no one knows us better than we know ourselves. Through self-reflection, we learn to trust our own intuition, our own inner voice. We begin to rely less on the opinions of others and more on the quiet guidance that comes from within. This process of self-reflection is not always easy. It requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to face the parts of ourselves that we may have been avoiding. But it is through this very discomfort that transformation occurs. When we are willing to sit with ourselves, to reflect on where we've been and where we're going, we unlock a deeper understanding of who we are and what we need. And from that place of understanding, we can make empowered choices that lead to a more fulfilling, authentic life. Self-reflection is also an ongoing practice. It's not something we do once and then move on from. It's a habit that we build into our lives, a ritual of checking in with ourselves regularly. Whether it's through journaling, meditation, or simply taking a walk in nature, self-reflection is a way of staying connected to ourselves in a world that is constantly pulling us in different directions. It reminds us that our relationship with ourselves is the most important relationship we will ever have, and it is one that deserves our attention and care. Ultimately, when we trust the power of self-reflection, we are trusting in our ability to grow, to evolve, and to become the best version of ourselves. We are trusting that every experience, every emotion, every choice has something to teach us, and that by taking the time to reflect, we can learn those lessons and use them to create a life that is true to who we are. Reclaiming your power through distance is one of the most liberating acts of self-preservation. In life, we often find ourselves entangled in relationships, environments, or habits that drain our energy and compromise our sense of self. We stay in situations that no longer serve us out of obligation, fear, or comfort, even when those situations slowly erode our inner peace. But there is a profound strength in choosing to step back, to create space, and to regain control over our lives by embracing distance. Distance allows us to see things from a clearer perspective. When we're too close to a situation, whether it's a toxic relationship, a draining job, or an unhealthy pattern of behavior, it's difficult to see it for what it truly is. We get caught up in the emotions, the history, and the expectations of others. But by stepping back, we give ourselves the opportunity to breathe, to reflect, and to evaluate the situation without the weight of immediate pressure or influence. It's in this space that we start to recognize what is no longer aligned with our values, what is holding us back, and what needs to change. Creating distance doesn't mean cutting ties in anger or shutting people out without reason. It's about recognizing when you need to prioritize your well-being over the comfort of staying in familiar but harmful circumstances. Sometimes distance means temporarily stepping away to gain clarity. Other times it means creating permanent space between you and the people or things that deplete you. Either way, the act of establishing distance is not about abandoning others, it's about returning to yourself. There's an inherent power in saying, I need space. In doing so, you acknowledge that your energy is finite and that it's your responsibility to protect it. So often we give away our power by allowing others to dictate how we feel, how we respond, and how much of ourselves we offer. We give and give, sometimes out of love, sometimes out of duty, until we're left feeling empty. But when you reclaim your power through distance, you take control of your energy. You decide how much you are willing to give, to whom, and under what circumstances. And that decision is a powerful one. Distance is also a way to honor your boundaries. It sends a clear message to the world and to yourself that you will no longer tolerate what diminishes your spirit. Boundaries are not just about keeping harmful influences at bay, they are about creating the space you need to thrive. By stepping back from what is unhealthy or draining, you allow yourself to cultivate environments that nourish you. You make room for relationships that uplift you, for pursuits that inspire you, and for habits that contribute to your well-being. Reclaiming your power through distance means choosing to invest your energy where it is valued and respected. Moreover, distance allows for healing. When we're too close to pain or conflict, we can't see beyond it. The hurt feels all-encompassing, and we often react from a place of emotional overwhelm rather than rational thought. But when we create distance, we give ourselves the time and space needed to process our emotions, to understand our pain, and to heal from it. This healing isn't just about getting over something, it's about integrating the lessons that come from it. It's about understanding what led us to a place of discomfort or distress in the first place and using that knowledge to make better, more empowered choices moving forward. There's also a profound freedom that comes with reclaiming your power through distance. In a world that often pushes us to constantly be connected, to always be available, and to meet the demands of others, choosing to create space can feel revolutionary. It's an act of self-respect, a declaration that your well-being is not negotiable. This freedom is not just about physical distance, though sometimes that's necessary. It's also about emotional and mental distance. It's about disentangling yourself from the expectations and judgments of others, from the need to please, and from the fear of disappointing those around you. It's important to understand that reclaiming your power through distance is not a one-time event. It's a practice that requires ongoing awareness and self-compassion. As you evolve, the people and situations that once fit into your life may no longer serve you in the same way. Distance allows you to continuously reassess what is working and what is not, and to adjust accordingly. It's a dynamic process that empowers you to remain true to yourself, even as the world around you changes. This practice also teaches you that you are responsible for the energy you allow into your life. When you reclaim your power through distance, you become the gatekeeper of your own peace. You no longer allow others to dictate your emotions or your sense of worth. Instead, you define your own boundaries, your own limits, and your own needs. This is not about isolating yourself from others. It's about choosing relationships and situations that are mutually supportive, respectful, and empowering. Ultimately, reclaiming your power through distance is about choosing yourself. It's about recognizing that you are worthy of peace, of space, and of a life that nourishes you. It's about taking ownership of your energy and your time, and not allowing anyone or anything to take more from you than you are willing to give. By creating distance, you are saying to yourself and to the world, I matter. And that is the most powerful statement you can make.